Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's topic is the ego, and this last lesson, that not last lesson because there's so many lessons to be learned, but this recently last lesson that I've been learning, and I was humbled. I'm gonna be honest, like I was humbled by spirit, by source, by God, whichever word you choose to use, with my ego. Because to be honest with you, like I did not realize that that's what was happening. And recently spirit led me to have a conversation to kind of close a chapter in my life, and what I thought that was going to be the reason why I was closing that chapter, it had nothing to do with what spirit had for me. And if you're watching this video, I believe that there's something here for you to learn or take away from it. And I just want you to have an open mind, because the ego tries to keep us safe, right? It's not a good or a bad thing. It just tries to protect us in the ways that it thinks it is, right? And for me, I didn't realize that this one thing that irked me about this person, I was also doing it. And I'm gonna just give you an example of it, because I know that through experiences we can all relate to each other. We're all one. So for me, I didn't like the fact that this person would say hurtful things when they were either not getting their way, or they were just that was just their way to cope with the rejection that they were feeling, right? And I didn't really see this trait in myself, I'll be honest with you. So I saw them as like what's your problem? Why are you being so dramatic? Because for me, it felt like my emotions were not taken into accord, so I didn't take their emotions into accord, which is why we are mirroring each other, right? And you can learn the best from people. Like isolation, you do not learn. Like you learn better when you are with people, around people, because they mirror back to you exactly what it is in you that needs to be healed. And if you're being triggered by a person, it is 101% something that you need to heal from, and you need to really take the step to see outside of yourself what is going on. So for me, I realized that when my ego is triggered, I can be such a... Sorry. I might have to beep that out. I can be such a bitch, you know? Because for me, it's like, you don't think my feelings are valid? Let me show you that yours aren't. And what do we get out of that? We get absolutely no solution, because guess what? As humans, a natural reaction to when somebody like takes a jab at you is to jab back, right? But that's not what God wants us to do. God wants us to actually meet them with love, because guess what? That version of that person that is triggering you is a version of you that needs to be loved. And when we pass judgment onto them, we're passing judgment onto ourselves. We don't free ourselves from that judgment, because guess what? Nobody's perfect. We're all flawed. That's why we have the ego in the first place. The moral of the story is, though, is like we're passing judgment on them when we're really judging ourselves. So it could be a hard pill to swallow, because when in the moment, heat of the moment, we have all these feelings, we're just like, you know what, this person's bad, that person's bad, I'm a good person. And that's what the ego wants you to keep, this idea that you are such a good person, that you can do no wrong. But the truth is, we are flawed. We always do wrong. We do wrong, we do good, we do all of these things, but to put a label on it puts us in categories, and it inherently it makes us judge ourselves and punish ourselves. That's where that guilt and shame comes up, because we feel like if we're a good person, then we deserve this. If we're a bad person, then we deserve that. Nobody is here, none of us can pass judgment. Only God. I'm gonna be honest with you, only God. So I wrote down some things that I wanted to share and read off to you guys based off of the lessons that I learned. So I'm going to share what my ego was teaching me and what I realized about my ego. And I want you guys to really ask yourself if you relate to this, because just because you know that your ego behaves a certain way doesn't mean you're a bad person. Like this version of me that you see versus the version of me that maybe somebody else may have in their head, they're all valid versions. Everybody has their own reality, their own perception of you. So this made me realize that all of the times when I'm putting people in categories of you're a bad person, it doesn't make a difference, because guess what? At the end of the day, they could probably see me as a bad person, but that's their perception. Everybody's entitled to their own perception. But when we release the judgment on others, we release the judgment on ourselves, so we can truly actually be free. Okay, so I wanted to read what I wrote down. I'm gonna be honest with you, like it might not make much sense, but it was just based off of my realization. You know when you have the aha moment? Yeah. So let me open it up. Okay. So the ego, I wrote. When looking at the ego, so I was watching a video on this guy. He says when you're looking at your ego, it's good to ask this question. So this is a question that he said. So he said, ask yourself, how is this a defense against love? Every time you're looking at your ego or you're in a situation where you feel frustrated or somebody's triggering you, how is this a defense against love? Because guess what? At the end of the day, we all want to be loved, and if we feel like someone is condemning us or putting us in a box where we feel like we're being judged and being punished, then the natural reaction is to be upset about it. And I think about it like in terms of, say you don't want to be friends with somebody anymore, and someone takes that personally in terms of saying that, like, okay, she doesn't want to be my friend anymore, she thinks I'm a bad person. What would their natural reaction be? Is to project that back onto you, right? So at the end of the day, we are all just trying to be loved, and if we feel like we're being attacked in a negative way, then we react in a negative way. So for example, I wrote down procrastination as an example. And the answer, how is this a defense against love? I don't actually commit myself to anything because I have a fear of failure. If I try and don't succeed, I will be crushed. The ego tries to keep you safe from succeeding at the things that seem out of this world for you to achieve, because if you don't try, you believe you can't fail. Deep down, it's protecting you from a belief you have that you are a failure. So deep down, you feel like you're a failure. So your ego keeps you in this loop of like, okay, let's just like not try that, because if we don't try, then we can't fail. When in terms, you are still technically failing, but the ego is protecting you from, if you tried and you didn't succeed, then you feel like you'd be crushed, it'd be the end of the world. So your ego is protecting you from that. And this can apply to not just procrastination and the things that you want to achieve in life, but just anything. If the ego thinks that something is out of reach for you, say you like, okay, I want to be a millionaire, and you only got $2 in your bank account, your ego is going to be like, no, like, this is what we're used to, let's not try to shake it up. But the ego is really just trying to protect you in the best way that it knows how. And I think about how, basically for me, growing up with all of these judgments that were passed on me at school, at home, it made me become a very judgmental person. So I would look at this person and be like, okay, well, like, you're not a good person. At the end of the day, that is not my call to make. That's God's call to make, right? So anyway, so I'm gonna keep reading. Ego situation. My mind is trying to keep me safe by making me look at blank, I'm not gonna drop names, blank situation, with her being the villain. This perceives my idea of myself that I am perfect and everyone else is the problem. However, what I have learned from this situation is that my ego shows that I can be a hateful person, especially when I choose resentment or to not forgive someone. When I choose to not forgive someone, I put them in a category of you are bad. So now I condemn you. I judge you. Who am I to pass judgment onto other people? That's not my job, right? And when I free myself from that, I free myself from extra drama. I free myself from not having peace. And at the end of the day, what is the goal? Peace. Peace of mind. Okay, so if you keep finding yourself in the same situation with different characters, take a look at how you are showing up as well. Okay. I keep that hate in my heart when I choose not to forgive someone. However, she is not a bad person. She is someone simply acting out of fear. So if we can take ourselves out of the picture and really just see a person for what they are and what they're going through. So for example, if you look at it, because for me, words hurt. Words are gonna always hurt for everybody. So if you say something hurtful to me and I take that personally because you said it, right? If I stop, I take a step back and I say, you know what? This person never had the love that they needed when they were younger. This is why they are saying these things. I'm not excusing the behavior, but I'm taking myself out of it and not taking on their own personal trauma, right? I give that back to them because that is on them. I choose to believe what about me? I choose to believe that I am a loving and caring person. And listen, when you validate yourself, no matter what anybody else says outside of you, that is their own truth. You put that back onto them because they're projecting onto you what they believe about themselves at the end of the day. When my ego gets hurt, I want to demonize the person, but they are simply acting out of their own limitations and fear. My ego tries to keep me safe by having me think I am never wrong. However, I was wrong in this situation for telling her that she is not her authentic self. Not every question needs an honest answer. I'm gonna pause right there. So another lesson that I learned this week is that when someone asks you a question about why this, or why did you do this, or what did you come up with, not every time you need to give them an honest answer. Like, if you use your discernment and say, is this person in this place to receive this, or am I saying this back because they hurt my feelings, right? Fighting words, like if you say a negative word and someone says a negative word back to you, it is just gonna keep going. It's just gonna keep going, and at the end of the day, it's depleting your energy. So I want you to really come back to yourself and say, this is not you shying away from disagreement or not standing up for yourself, but this is me pulling back my energy and realizing that this person, no matter what I say, I will not win this argument. Not every argument needs to be won. That is how you can free yourself from constant drama and bickering back and forth, because at the end of the day, not every answer, you don't need to always give your honest opinion about stuff. I'll be honest with you, like, it is just one of those situations you need to assess, is this worth my peace of mind? Just ask yourself that before you respond. And if the answer is no, then guess what, don't say nothing. Okay, where was I? Okay, especially if it's not so. Okay, so not every answer needs an honest answer, especially if it's not someone I consider a friend. I can use my discernment to assess the situation, assess which situation needs honesty and which doesn't. So especially if you do not consider this person a close friend or a family member, someone you deem that if I say this honest answer to, it's coming from a place of love, and you do it with tact, right? If this person is not that to you, you don't need to start anything, right? Because you're coming from a place of love, you're trying to help this person. But if you know that they're not ready to hear it, leave it to God. Leave it to God. Anyway, that then turned into an I don't care comment. So when I said to her, I don't believe that you are authentic, you're showing up as your authentic self, I don't feel like you are being genuine towards me, you're just doing the right things, saying the right things to make me like you, you know what I mean, like people pleasing. I didn't need to say that. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I was very wrong in that situation, because if you're not ready to really look at that part of yourself, only thing that will do is trigger you. And then after that, what was the response? Well, I don't care about what you have to say, I don't care about your feelings. Why would that trigger me now? Because I've been in the situation where people have dissed my feelings, dismissed it as if it wasn't true, or if it wasn't that serious. So you see how I meet you with hate, then you meet me with hate, then I meet you with hate, then you meet me with hate. So it's like a loop of back and forth hate. It won't solve a thing. It won't solve anything. If anything, it just leads to more resentment and more and then what does the devil want? He wants us to be against each other, to see that, to believe that we are not the same, that we are outside of each other. Like, this person's a bad person, but I'm a good person. That's not how it works. We're all beautifully flawed. God made us all beautifully flawed for a reason. We are here to learn our lessons and to heal and ascend from that, you know? Okay, so that comment, now I'm going to talk about why that comment, which triggered my ego once again, because I have been in a situation similar with my mom in the past, when I tried to express my feelings and she told me that they don't matter and that they aren't that serious. I've been in this situation with many different people, and I've come to realize as I'm typing this, I will, and I'm the only person that will validate my feelings first. If others do, that's okay. If they don't, then that's okay too. So I wanted to pause there for a second. No one is entitled to validate your feelings, right? And when we take ourselves out of that, we regain our power. Because guess what? If I say at the end of the day, no matter what, I validate my feelings, no matter what Johnny says about whatever the hell he got to say, it's not going to affect me. Because if I think about it, I know that at the end of the day, how I feel is needed to be expressed. Whether somebody cares about what I'm saying, it's not about that. What it's about is the fact that I was able to express myself, communicate my feelings, however they take it is not what that's about. This is about me practicing my communication skills and being open in my relationships. If someone doesn't want to receive that, then they have the free will to not want to receive that. And we need to let go of the attachment that people need to behave in the ways that we think they should. Really not. Okay, I know that how I feel is valid, and if someone doesn't want to acknowledge that, then that's okay too. No one owes me any obligation, and I don't owe anyone any obligation either. So the same goes for you. Like, if you feel like in this situation, maybe you think this person is not, they're using their emotions to manipulate you. You don't have to respond in the way that they want you to respond. You choose how you respond in that moment. That always goes back down to free will and reclaiming our own power. Okay, I will simply go where I am celebrated and love myself more always. So at the end of the day, loving yourself is always going to be the best thing. And when you put love on you, I want you to stop and ask yourself in this situation, how do I relate to this person that I feel so triggered by? What in myself do I see that I have yet to accept and love? Because in this moment, that made me realize that the victim side of me, I have yet to accept. I have yet to love her unapologetically, knowing that if without her I wouldn't be where I am today, because I had to go down that route. I had to be a victim, lose my power so that I can regain it, reclaim it, and that's just life. It is just life. But yes, I'm still making my peace with that. I have to work through some things, some decisions that I've made in the past that I felt like were either I had shame or guilt about. So that is something that I realized that I was able to learn through this situation. So everybody's a teacher, a mirror. And a lot of the times when we are triggered, we try to think of ourselves as separate from them so that we don't have to deal with it. And that's what the ego does, okay? So I want you to really look at the situation that has triggered you and say, how can I relate to this? And what part of me needs love? My ego behavior patterns. When I am triggered, I tend to put a mirror up and shine it in the areas I know would trigger my opponent back. So this is something I realize about myself when I say that I can be a hateful person too. So if you trigger me and you say, oh, you know what, your feelings don't matter, I don't give a shit what you gotta say, your feelings don't matter, I'll pick the mirror up and be like, well, you know what, giving you an example, that's why your mama didn't love you, I don't know, something like that. And it's hard to admit it because it's like, woo, damn, why you said that? But it made me realize that that is what my ego feels like it's protecting me, because words were said to me when I was younger to hurt me, and that's just the natural defense that my ego has developed. And I feel like it's justified because they said it first. So it's always like, that's how I determine if someone's a good person or not. If you said it to me first, then I'm gonna say something back. And you're a bad person because you started it. And you see how it's like, you started it, but who's gonna finish it? You can choose to finish it by not engaging in it, by not allowing your ego to take the driver's seat, honestly. And I really am still making my peace with this, because I was like, damn, like, my ego really, she really ready to beat a bitch up. Yeah. So I really have to learn my ego, befriend my ego, so that I can know that, hey, you know what? It's okay. Let's figure out what we're actually triggered by. Let's work through this. However, this is not effective. Fighting hate with more hate only creates more hate and pain. I can simply live in peace by not fighting fire with fire. This is when I choose to not react back with my words. I realize how much power words can have in a situation. It should be thought about before it is said. So what I should have done was just breathe, instead of saying the first thing that came to my mind. I also react in petty behaviors when my ego is trying to protect me. If someone says they don't care about my initial feelings or hurt and sadness, that turns into anger. Well, then you are dead to me. However, that's not effective. So the first thing is just like, okay, well, you don't want to care, then you're dead to me. You don't even exist to me anymore. That is my ego, and I'm saying it out loud, because guess what? Somebody has to. It doesn't allow me to acknowledge how I truly feel, but simply put me in the defense mode against love. Because what I should have said in that situation was, you hurt my feelings. I didn't like that you said that. And now we are going back and forth, because this is like the fourth conversation we've had and it's still going back and forth. Well, what I should have just said was my feelings were really hurt and I don't know how to deal with that, right? And I don't know how to deal with that. Why is that? Somebody was calling me in the middle of this. But anyway, yes. And I don't know how to deal with that, right? That's how you effectively communicate your feelings. And listen, they don't have to respond in the way that you think they do. But if they say something hurtful back again, then that's your cue to leave, right? That's your cue to say, I'm going to excuse myself from this situation because I don't like the way that you're talking to me, and I will not sit here and take that. That's it. Instead of saying something back and meeting them where they're at, because that lowers your vibration as well, right? What I would truly need in that moment, when someone says to me they do not care about my feelings, is to tell myself that my feelings are valid and I care about my feelings. Comfort myself and be there for me in the moment. Don't let this person's words have power over you to the point where they take you off your path of unconditional love. Let them sit with their own demons. Don't take it on for yourself. So when you decide to tit for tat back, you take that demon on too. Let's be honest, because now you're fighting, and you're in that hate for hate frequency. So that's just what I wrote down in terms of like my ego lessons, guys. And I don't know, like this is a very vulnerable series for me because this is the first time in my life where I've really realized the role that I've played in past relationships, and I'm thinking that I'm believing that God put me through this so that when I do make new friendships and I do make new relationships in the future, that they come from a place of love and let go of fear. And because let's be honest, like when we're not feeling good and we're ending up in situations like this, it's fear. It's really fear. And yeah, so I wanted to pull a card from my elemental empathic deck so that we can really just see what's going on, because let's be honest, like we feel our emotions very deeply, this collective. And when a person says something to us that is very hurtful, it is what will determine whether or not we react a certain way, right? That's the ego right there. Okay, so let's see what it is that Spirit wants us to know at this time in terms of our feelings and our emotions. Oh, this one popped out. Ego illusions. This is why I'm talking about we can't make this up. Spirit be on point. Let me just read this card, because I'm telling you, your ego I'm just shocked but not shocked. You know what I mean? Shocked but not shocked. So yeah, I hope this video made sense, because I kind of feel like I was all over the place, but it was the best that I could it's the best that I could explain it. 195. And I also want you guys to know that just because you are realizing that your ego may have played a role in a situation, and that you may have been wrong in this situation, doesn't mean you're a bad person. The only thing you need is compassion and love for yourself, because guess what? You're acting out of fear as well. Healing is not linear. It never makes any sense until it does, okay? But just find that compassion and love for yourself and for the other person, because that is you. Think about it, that's as in you're sending yourself love as well when you do that. It's not you admitting defeat, okay? It's actually you choosing courage, choosing bravery, okay? So just I'm just saying that, okay? What is the ego? The ego is essentially the limited lens through which we see the world. It is the I part of us that can be self-involved and stuck in limiting beliefs about the world. The ego only likes to see the world through its own view and struggles to open up to a wider reality. It also wants to keep us safe and will do just about anything to sabotage us when it thinks we are going into unknown or unsafe territory. This is why it is important to know ourselves and the illusions we might be stuck in. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So really realizing when your ego is at play will allow you to see what the constant loop of what you're stuck in is. Because the lunar eclipse is coming up, guys, and subconscious things that are keeping us stuck, this is definitely one of them. I realized that this is 101% one of them. I cannot expect other people to meet me with love if I'm not meeting them with love, right? That's just simply a fact. We project onto others how we feel. Okay, so if I'm projecting this onto you, you're gonna project it right back. So why not project love? Okay. Ego identity. The ego isn't inherently bad, though it is often portrayed that way. It is meant to keep us alive and safe, even if it goes about it in unhelpful ways. Many of our coping mechanisms, addictions, and limiting beliefs keep us from having to deal with things we aren't ready for. The journey of befriending the ego is about facing these painful parts of ourselves and learning to heal them instead of demonizing them. The ego creates stories as a foundation for who it is. Stories such as, I am a bad person, I am a good person, this always happens to me, I am unlovable, etc. It uses these to create an identity about who it thinks it is and who it thinks it should be. And its core, the ego must believe it is somebody, even if that person isn't someone you like. Source transcends this and invites us into pure existence, where there is no mask to define who we are. In different situations, ask yourself, what version of myself is showing up? Is it a wounded self who can only see a limited view? The ego tries to keep us small and safe, so when we feel blocked or triggered, pause and ask yourself, what part of you is in control? The wounded self or the wise self or the higher self, the true self? The ego creates many levels of stories. Remember that ultimately, your mind is trying to keep you safe. Create a safe and neutral space to listen to what the ego is saying about getting sucked into it. Listen to what the ego is trying to say without getting sucked into it. Befriend it. Lean in with curiosity, like listening to a child recount the story of their day's grand adventures. So before I continue, you know how I said like back and forth, where it's just like, oh, well, you started this, or you started this, well, you said this. That's how the ego behaves. It behaves like a child. It behaves like, okay, let's listen what's going on. Okay, just be curious. Don't egg it on. Don't not egg it on, but just listen. Okay, you aren't invested or necessarily believing it all, just curious to hear the story. The ego, when we are connected with our true self, can show us where our wounds and attachments are. It leads us to the place that needs healing, and given time and love, the blocks will melt and give way to pure existence. So the ego is a really good way for us to dive into which parts of us needs the healing. Okay, so that's why it's not a bad thing. It is just simply there to show us, but we need to realize and recognize, when is it coming up? Which part of me is showing up in this situation? Is a great question to ask, so I'm gonna write that down. The ego wants us to be someone. The wise self knows that we just are. The ego needs a way to define itself, whereas the wise self simply exists. Don't always believe your thoughts. Not all of your thoughts are true. In fact, many of them are not. Our minds have a way of feeding us negative information that isn't true, especially about ourselves and our situation. This is called the negative bias. Thousands of years ago, when we were hunter-gatherers, we were constantly on the lookout for danger, for something that could harm or even eat us. The survival instinct to look for the negative or dangerous is hardwired into us even today. The thing is, most of us no longer live in a state of constant danger, and luckily our brains are malleable. So it's time to retrain our brains away from stress and to see the good. So where do these thoughts come from, and how do we know which ones to believe? The answer to where is simply our surroundings. We absorb so much around us, especially as children, before our prefrontal cortex has developed. We are like sponges, taking in nearly everything without a filter. We absorb less as we age, but things still get in, especially if something is traumatic or was already introduced earlier in life. So when these negative or self-deprecating thoughts intrude, pause and ask yourself if you have heard them before. Where do they come from? It isn't always necessary to dig out the source, though sometimes it can be helpful. Instead of spiraling into the thought, look at it with curiosity and lean in gently to investigate it. Another thing too, like if you see a thought coming up that feels negative, you really do not have to claim it as you. Okay, you choose to claim it as you or not. That is another way that we give our power away. If it's not a positive thought, it did not come from God. If it's a negative thought, I would say sit with it and say, how does this relate to my childhood? How does this relate to a trauma, a deep-wounded trauma that I feel? And really just sit with it. Lean into it with curiosity, but don't take it on as if this is a fact, this is true. Okay. The other side is knowing which of these thoughts to trust and which not to. The answer can be boiled down to this question: how does it feel? Messages from our true selves are helpful, kind, compassionate, and something direct. They have feeling of truth and uplift to them. On the other hand, thoughts that are not yours inspire you to spiral, hate yourself, even if they're pretending to be helpful, and ultimately bring emotions like shame, hate, fear, and smallness. Past traumas. This ties into old patterns and traumas that come up as well. When triggered, the ego can mislead you to judge an otherwise innocent situation as unsafe because it takes you back to a similar event in the past that traumatized you. So even when I think about this situation and what played out, I've been in this situation with past friends as well. What was the lesson? I felt like I was unsafe with this person because they reminded me of the people in the past who stayed, pretended to be my friend, and weren't genuinely invested in me. They just, I don't know what was the reason for them to stay around in my life when they weren't genuinely invested in me. But if I had realized that this is my ego at play, maybe I would have done things differently, right? Not to say that this wasn't supposed to play out in the way that it was, but I'm just saying that befriending our ego can allow us to see if we're recreating our past traumas or if this is truly a dangerous situation, right? When triggered, the ego can mislead you to judge an otherwise innocent situation as unsafe because it takes you back to a similar event in the past that traumatized you. You can feel that you are reliving it, but when you are grounded and connected with yourself, you can breathe through the trigger and the thoughts and validate the difficult feelings they bring up, while at the same time realizing that the thoughts aren't true. For example, you might think, I am a horrible person. This feeling is valid, but the thought is not entirely true. A better way to phrase it can be, I feel like a horrible person. This thought isn't true, and I allow these feelings to move through me. A great rule of thumb when these thoughts arise is to pause, ground, and connect, and feel through the emotions that arise, seeing if any insights arise. Ego illusions. Lastly, this card asks if there are any illusions that you might be stuck in. Are there any beliefs that that are keeping you small? It might be time to build some awareness around this and work through it. So for me, realizing that I really, my deep-rooted fear is that I can never really make friends, right? Or people won't actually like me for me. They just pretend to be my friend and stay around. So I would say that that's something that came up this week for me. Potential blocks. Intrusive thoughts can be powerful and so convincing. They give us all kinds of evidence to prove that they are absolutely true. However, this card reminds you that your thoughts may be lying to you, no matter how convincing they sound. A potential block to this card could be that you are spiraling in powerful thoughts that aren't true. If so, it's time to shake things up. Get out of the house, go see friends, put on a movie, see a therapist, go for a run, anything that will put a pause to the relentless thoughts that give you a chance to breathe. You don't always have to fight your thoughts. Get out of the loop, ground, connect, and above all, don't try to reason with thoughts that have already shown they can disprove your arguments. Another blockage could be the flip side, not believing uplifting thoughts or other input that you maybe should. Start to open yourself up to positive thoughts about yourself, however small. Invite them in a little at a time and give them space to root. The third potential block is being in denial about your shortcomings. Spiraling and getting lost in these shortcomings is not helpful, but there is always a way to work with these blocks. Even when strong, there is always a different perspective to take, and the fact that you have shortcomings doesn't make you less of a person. Own up to them and open your mind to different perspectives on how to work through them. So even if, like, it goes back to saying that even if you were wrong in the situation, it doesn't mean you need to spiral in it and be like, I'm a terrible person. No. Hold space and love for yourself, compassion for yourself, and realize where this wound is coming from. Okay? Exercise. This is an exercise to give you perspective on negative thoughts about yourself. When you are in a good space, just not completely triggered, write out some of these thoughts on paper. Now ask yourself, are they true? Are they absolutely true in every situation? Is it just a belief? This exercise might not disapprove the thought, but it can make you aware of your brain make you aware if your brain is lying to you. Also try seeing yourself as an innocent child and imagine believing these things of a child. Can you? Is it so much harder to demonize a child? See yourself that way because that child is you. So ego illusions, I just love the lesson of the day. I'm not gonna lie to you. And God, spirit, source, they amaze me every day. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So just have compassion for yourself in this time, guys, and it's okay to fall short. We are human. That's why we were made flawed, okay? I'm gonna pull a message from your future higher self to end this, because I feel like you guys need to know that even though you fell short on whatever it is that you fell short on, it doesn't mean that you're off your path. It doesn't mean that your higher self is going to disconnect from you because you did this one thing, okay? If anything, your higher self is very proud that you were able to acknowledge that you fell short, okay? So let's see what messages come through for your future higher self. Okay, Spirit, any messages that they need to hear from them higher selves? I welcome them in now with love. Oh, any more messages? Oh! Wow, your future higher self is talking. It's talking. Okay. Let me pick this up. Some fell on the ground, some fell underneath the feet, like. Okay. So the first one that fell out, perspective is a matter of where you stand. Okay. So looking at your situation from a different POV, take yourself out of the situation and really truly ask yourself, how have I been showing up? Is this from my wounded self? Is this from my higher self's perspective? Everything is unfolding as it should be. So don't have any regrets in terms of how you did show up in the situation. You are meant to show up in a situation so you can see it for the illusion that it is, so that you can heal and let it go. Okay? And just show up differently in the future going forward. Big dreams built by those who do the work. Do the work, okay? So it wasn't going to be easy. A lot of the times when we doing this healing process, it's painful to really see yourself in the shadow aspect. But we are not just light. We are also dark, okay? And that's why I said that the ego is not a bad thing. It is just something that is trying to protect us, okay? So those are the messages from your future higher self. Those are the messages I have for you guys today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share this with somebody who's been in their ego. And we are all healing together. We're all learning together, and have that compassion and love for yourself, because you are beautifully loved by God. God loves every single part of us, okay? Yes, I love you guys. Don't forget to like,